with learning disabilities and autism. And also we have some mental health services and some brain injury units in our membership. So I think we see a good cross-section of what's going on in the sector.
Fantastic. And Angela, if I can come to yourself, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Angela Boxall. I've got two hats. So I'm CEO of Majestic Care, which is a care group predominantly, again, for older people with nursing, residential or memory care needs. And I also work with Martin, doing all the things that he said, or pretending I do all the things he says. He does them really, at Care England, which is another great honour. So thank you very much for having me here.
Fantastic. And Sarah, to yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Catanzaro. I work for Alsico. We are a workwear manufacturer based in the UK. My role is the design manager. So basically anything to do with product and development. I work very closely with the healthcare industry. I've worked in the industry for over 20 years now, developing healthcare uniforms and understanding what some of the challenges are that our healthcare wearers have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I'm going to dive straight into questions here. So Angela, if you think about the conversations that you're having with your teams today compared to 5 years ago, what's changed the most for you?
I think the conversations have changed, but I think it's probably because people are a little bit more brave. I think people are more open to saying what it is that they sort of need. And years ago, I think people were afraid to step forward, put their hand up and sort of say, you know what, I'm not feeling great today for whatever reason. And maybe that's changing culture, changing leadership. I don't know, but certainly there's been a shift that we're all open to talking about things a little bit more. And I think that's the critical thing that's changed. Those conversations are happening. They're not just happening behind a closed door at a desk either. I think they're happening out in the homes and out in the communities for home care. And I think peers are talking to each other about it. I think people now understand a little bit more that their well-being actually helps them to be better carers, to be better people, and to be better humans and happier people. So I think the conversations may still be the same. I think the arena in which we're having them is different, which allows then for a more positive outcome.
Fantastic. And I guess just to dive into that a little bit more in terms of what they are coming and sharing now, kind of areas of looking for more support or asking questions about and wanting to know more about, are there particular areas that sit?
I think flexibility is a huge one. So I think, years ago, this was your shift and that was it. Whereas now I think, a lot more people are looking at flexible working. I think a lot more providers and employers are more open to those discussions. I think people want to look after their own well-being. People want to make sure they have those days off and not, work 5 or 6 on the trot all of the time. And I think people's expectations have changed. I think people, expect more from their employer, and so they should. But I think flexible working around people's well-being, whether it be, childcare needs, whether it be disability or illness, whether it be, and I know you've done a lot of work and research on the menopause, which is a really important one in our sector, seeing as it affects probably, a huge percentage of women working in care, and men who are living with women that are experiencing the problem. So I think people are more open, people listen more, and people trust more that I think something will be done about it.
Fantastic. And Martin, are you seeing these similar themes across the Care England membership? What do those conversations look like? What are people asking for maybe a bit more support and guidance from Care England on?
Yeah, I think Angela's absolutely right. I think people are much more open now about what they want. And I certainly think also that post the pandemic, people are looking at their work in different ways. People want more flexibility. I think we're also seeing more younger people coming into the workforce, and the generation who are coming up are much more clear about things like their well-being needs, for example. I think we're also seeing employers who are acknowledging that and are really on the front foot. So Angela also mentioned issues like the menopause. Well, there has been a lot of work done, and we've done some work on that at Care England. And employers are now understanding, particularly because in the demographics of the workforce, there are a lot of women in that sort of age group. Employers are having to understand how they make sure that the work that people do fits into some of the challenges that they have. And also, a lot of people who are working as professional carers also have caring responsibilities, both for children and also for parents, etc. So people need that flexibility. And I think what I'm seeing is there is a growing understanding that the workforce need the flexibility, but there's also growing understanding from employers that in order to retain people, and let's not forget, retention is the best thing you can do. This constant churn of staff is not good for the people you support or for the organisation. So some of those issues have also started to come to the fore, and employers understand that if they are really clear about their offer to their staff, that will pay its benefit in terms of retention.
Fantastic, absolutely. And Sarah, I mean, these are certainly themes that you and I have discussed at length. So, what prompted Alsico to undertake this latest research, and what was it that the company was hoping to learn from care workers directly?
Yeah, I totally agree with Angela and Martin. The industry, particularly post the pandemic, is evolving, and workers are looking for support. They're looking for improvement in working conditions. That they've got used to one way of working, and then they've gone back into a new way of working, and they need some support. So what we were trying to understand was, given that care sector has been quite a priority for Alsico over the years, is understanding those everyday experiences that are happening within the care industry, that are influencing these people to feel supported at work, to help drive that retention. But obviously retention isn't really just one issue alone. So we wanted to understand what the challenges are that we're seeing within those, and how we can support them, whether that's physically, emotionally, practically. But also, it wasn't just about highlighting those challenges, but looking at how we could identify some of the good practices that are being done by some of the care industry workers, and how we could share that to improve the industry as a whole.
Fantastic. Yeah, and obviously, the report has these statistics from the survey, but also has contributions from leaders, across the sector. So I think a really good way to get that in-depth understanding and actually be able to start making a difference on a variety of scales. So Angela, when you think about the colleagues of yours who have built long careers with Majesticare, what do you think keeps them there? What is it that keeps people in the organisation and, their satisfaction levels?
Well, I'm not sure they're satisfied every day, but they're still here, so we're obviously doing something right.
Very realistic.
So I think, there's a lot of things. I think open and positive leadership is really, really important. And I don't just mean from myself and the other directors. I actually mean from each other. That everybody's a leader in some way, shape or form. And I think that by giving people that privilege to lead other people is really, really important, and then recognizing them for it. So, when somebody does do something great, when somebody does make a difference to somebody's day, by letting them come in a bit earlier, have those extra breaks, those kind of things, that doesn't go unnoticed, because otherwise people give up trying. But I think, interestingly, what you were saying about career opportunities, the majority of the team at Majesticare have worked their way up from various other roles. I started off at Majesticare as a senior care assistant. Majesticare bought me when I was a home manager, and I've had the privilege and the opportunity from others, same as we have an office administrator who's our now new chief of people. So, career opportunities actually are what people aspire to and grow to. And I think that does not surprise me that came up in your research. I think if everybody's getting up to go to work today and they don't know, they're going to be in the same place tomorrow, then a lot of people give up. But I think listening, I think people know that my door's open, their doors are open for me as well if I want to go and talk to them. I think listening to people and what people need is critical to success, because we all have challenges every single day. And if we can share that burden, which, share that burden and support each other along the way. So culture, I suppose, is the word I'm looking for. Having an open, positive, flexible culture that supports each other, I think is critical to maintaining and retaining teams.
Yeah, and I think that openness is something that gets us away from assumptions, because it's easy to assume that what motivates and satisfies a workforce, but for everybody it's individual. And that's something that definitely came out of the reports when people ranked their factors is, they were naturally quite diverse answers, because not everybody wants necessarily career progression, but they might want to know what it looks like for them, or what might change their conditions at work or their responsibilities. So yeah, really interesting. And
it's listening to the individual. It's listening to the individual rather than treating everybody the same, or having a policy for every single person. Having a look at every single person individually really does make a difference, because they feel like a name and not a number, and that actually makes a really big difference.
I think it's where those long-standing employee examples come from, because if you don't know, because you've not asked and you've not offered the opportunity, somebody might never have taken that path naturally. So yeah, really, really interesting. Martin, I guess across the sector, where this is something I know you're very passionate and involved in, the providers with the stronger retention rates, or having a little bit more success in this area, what are they doing differently?
Well, I think Angela put her finger on it when she talked about leadership, but I think it's also creating a real vision, and a vision based in the values of the organization. Also, when we talk about leadership, we should talk about collaborative leadership. It's not about people sitting in an office saying, I'm the leader, this is what you do. It's about everybody understanding that there is a common purpose in the organization, and them feeling really connected to that common purpose. I think there are some also really important things, like, for example, giving people access to training and development opportunities. Some of that might be about career and skill specific opportunities, but some other things might be about developing the person so that they feel literally valued within the organization. Angela talked earlier about recognition. I think that's really important as well. And also, I think particularly in the care sector, there are a lot of people who really love doing that direct caring role. So we have to create opportunities for them not only to move into different levels in the organization, but actually we need to reward people who want to continue to care. So many years ago in social work, there was the advanced practitioner role, and I've seen some care providers starting to develop those roles. So it gives people an understanding they can advance their career, they can develop themselves, they can develop their skills, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to walk away from direct caring in order to enhance your career. So we've seen a lot of those sorts of initiatives coming through, and they really are paying dividends in terms of the sustainability of the workforce, people engaging proactively, people who are staying with organizations because they feel those organizations value them. And also Angela's point about treating everybody as an individual. We always aspire to do that in relation to how we deliver care, but we should also remind ourselves we need to do that as employers.
Absolutely. And I guess, are there any, to put you on the spot a bit here, sorry, Martin, but are there any examples you've seen of, particularly with, I guess, larger care home groups where, homes are across the country and it's not as, centralized, and obviously people aren't spending their day on laptops, how best does that communication and connection tend to work? Is there anything you've seen that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen lots of good examples. And in fact, yesterday I was at a great example in Kent, which was LDC Care, and they've done some amazing things with their colleagues, but they've also integrated their colleagues' approach with people who use the services too. So, for example, people who use services sit in training sessions, people who use services engage when it comes to recruitment with colleagues. So I think some of those things have been happening in some corporates, but also in some smaller organizations. And one of the things that I think came across for me and has come across for me as I go out and about, I see lots of examples, and it's not dependent on the scale of the organization. It's dependent upon the values of the organization, the leadership in the organization, the collaborative approach. And if you have those things, then you can deliver a really good work experience right the way through your organization, however devolved and decentralized it is. Because if you have a clear vision, if you recruit on values, if you empower and enable people, whether they're in the office in Kilmarnock or the care home in Kent, they're still all connected to that approach. And also giving people understanding and exposure to other colleagues who are doing different things in the organization. So, a great example yesterday, I went into the HR function in that organization, and usually those functions are often, should we say, separate from everything else. And there were people who use services in there talking to the staff. It was about saying, and that meant that everybody connected with what the real purpose of the organization was. And I think that's another way in which you really give people value and really connect with the organization.
Fantastic. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground there, Sarah, and I'm really keen to understand, did the research support what we're hearing today in terms of what those priorities are for the care sector, that were surveyed?
Yeah, very much so. Pretty much everything you said was supported within our research. I mean, half of the respondents said that emotional demands of their roles had affected their mental health at some point in their career. Yeah, it's interesting that only a quarter strongly agreed that their organisation provides adequate support. And feeling valued and supported was consistently emerging as one of the key themes from the research that we saw. But I think it's also important to understand that everyone needs to be supported in a different way. It's very much like Angela was saying, that growth and development is important to people, but not everyone wants the same level of growth and development within their careers. And I think it's about looking at what the best practices are to create a culture where people feel listened to and involved with at an individual level, as well as at a corporate business level. I think sometimes a single message of how support can sometimes make more of a hindrance than a help. And one of the other things, again, that we saw was that training access was one of the strongest drivers to that job satisfaction. And again, it's about understanding what is it that the training, what training do they need, what level of training do they need, and that can help with the support as well. So definitely we've seen a lot of the points that Angela and Martin have already raised were very prominent within our research.
Fantastic. And I guess just to broaden that out a little bit, naturally with your backgrounds in kind of uniform design, I know uniform came up prominently in the kind of top factors that drive satisfaction. From your experience, I know you've done a lot in the sector over the past 2 years in particular, but what is it around kind of comfort and uniform satisfaction? What are those key conversations that typically come up for you?
Yeah, uniform ranked, it was the most important contributor to job satisfaction in our report. More than half said that the uniform fits affected their ability to perform their role. And obviously that comfort factor, especially within the health industry, where you're on your feet, you're in warm conditions, you've got a lot of bending, lifting, moving. You need something in a uniform that is going to move with you, is going to fit you perfectly, is going to give you that comfort where you basically don't have to even think about your uniform during the day. You've got a lot more other challenges to achieve during the day. So I think the understanding of how uniform plays is also understanding, back to my point about not everyone feels supported in the same way. It's the same with uniform. Not every uniform fits everyone the same way. We're all different body shapes, we're all different body sizes, genders. We like things tight fitting, loose fitting. So I think one of my recommendations would be, when it comes to uniform, is to really give your wearers an option of what they would like to wear. Now, I'm not saying they can have every different design and colour under the sun, but look at things like fits. So a couple of different fits of trousers, a slim fit and a wide leg, for example, a scrub top and a tunic, and really engage people in that conversation about uniform. It's back to how you support your staff. And I think if staff are included in these types of conversations, they're going to feel more empowered to be wearing that uniform, which obviously then can help with retention within the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess Moving on to, the changes that could make that big difference, I think one of the really interesting things that came out of the research that Alsico had conducted was that a lot of the factors influencing satisfaction weren't enormous, heavy investment strategic initiatives, but it was really down to the everyday experience of the staff member. So Sarah, what findings within that research do you feel really need spotlighting that we've maybe not covered so much, or kind of needs a little bit more understanding?
I think it's about also giving freedom of speech. So allowing people that forum to be able to get their frustrations out, to raise challenges, to raise issues. I think the longer you leave that, they will accumulate over time and they will become bigger issues. Like you said, a lot of the feedback that we had were quite small issues that can either be rectified or fixed. So I think it's about opening up a forum where there is that freedom of speech. You're giving people that opportunity to talk, to, even if it's just to air their frustrations, to get that frustration out. And also, I think one of the things you'll find is a lot of the frustrations are the same. So you might only listen to one worker within a day and you think, okay, right, fine, that's an issue that's related to that one worker. But if you listen to all your staff over a set period of time, you might find the same issue is coming up and over and over again, which again would accumulate into a big issue that you could nip in the bud quite quickly. And I think the tension is often shaped by daily experiences rather than a major event. So keeping on top of that conversation and that openness with the staff is key.
Yeah, fantastic. And Angela, I'm dying to know, because I love these real life examples, kind of what have you seen where relatively small changes have delivered really meaningful improvements with Majesticare?
I've quite a lot, but I just want to just pick up on something Sarah said, if I may, about uniforms fitting people properly. I remember when I first worked in care, there was a cupboard with uniforms in that people used to give back, they'd wash, and then you had to have the uniform that somebody else had before. So thank goodness we're not sort of living in those. So we have moved on significantly, but completely agree that there's still a long way to go. I guess from thinking of, I was thinking about things that we've done that have made a difference. And I think one of the things that we found we really struggled with, and again, after the pandemic, is that the only information that we got from the team was things that actually they were just unhappy about that day. Which is great. We need to know what they're unhappy about that day. But actually, we wanted to make sure that we were building a culture with our values and an environment that they were happy to come and stay, not just today, but in the future as well. And our survey results were great, but actually not many people were filling them in. We felt like we were getting another survey. So we completely changed the way that we did things, and we now do like daily feedback. So people can say, how was your shift today? And people can feedback. So that day stuff we capture, we deal with there and then.
And sorry to interrupt, Angela, how's that conducted? Is that just a face-to-face conversation?
As part of them clocking in and clocking out. So, it's smiley faces, it's sad faces. So it's really simple, but then it gives the manager the opportunity to say, just pop in and see me before you go. See you're not having a great shift today. So problems are nipped in the bud a lot quicker than waiting another 3 months for somebody to bring something up in a team survey. The other things that we do is if we do a survey, we say you said we did. So we always quantify that survey with what those results meant to us, how we worked with them, and what differences we made. So the changes we made from what people had said to us. But the best thing is we now do something called time to talk. So it's face to face with somebody from our people team, where they literally just sit there in a room all day, and you can pop in, you can bring a cup of tea, you don't have to make an appointment, you can if you want, if that's what suits you. But it's conversational. So it's not are you happy at work? Yes or no? Because actually we don't live in a yes and no world. So, and if somebody's, people can say, can you tell us why you're happy at work or why you're not happy at work? There's no better way to get information than from a conversation. So the conversations are confidential. Sometimes people come in threes and fours. It might be a little group of people that come in. But you know, our chief people officer Karen, she'll sit there all day and listen to people. Sometimes we do it reactively if we get some, you know, a team member that says to us, nobody's happy with this, everybody's fed up with having to, you know, come into work and have their break at this time.
Okay.
We often found out that the loudest voices are often the voices that dictate the direction of travel, and that should never be the case. And that's why it's so important to listen to every single person. So that's something that costs us nothing, but has made such a difference to our people, but also to how we can support our people. And the other thing that we've done that costs us nothing are wellbeing action plans. This is part of so rather than having these formal supervision type approaches between, you know, somebody sat behind a desk and somebody sat the other side of the desk, we have now what we call just for me moments. So they might be held while we're walking around the garden. We might go to the local tea shop for a cup of tea. It might be in the office, but we try not to have the desk there as a barrier. And it's an opportunity for people to talk about themselves, what they need. And then from that, we can put a wellbeing action plan in place. Some people don't want a wellbeing action plan, but actually people find that even if they didn't realise they needed one, they still need to look after their wellbeing. Even if they're feeling great today, they've got to make sure they still feel great, you know, next week and the week after, and so on and so forth. So all of this stuff is free. None of this information costs us anything. I suppose it's just resource. But that resource, the recognition that gives people, that you're actually sitting there and giving them time, listening and acting on what it is that they want, is priceless. It's priceless. So it stops people from calling in sick because you've nipped something in the bud. It stops people from leaving because you've nipped something in the bud. So while it might be front heavy on the resource, it does save a lot of time further down the line.
Amazing. And I think it really speaks to the idea of looking beyond, again, these assumptions of what might be influencing somebody's behaviour or their satisfaction levels. And Martin, I'm really interested to hear from yourself on, you know, do you think the sector as a whole has become better at recognising that well-being, you know, extends beyond pay and, you know, staffing levels and capacity and that kind of thing? Do you think we're already making good progress, or, you know, a ways to go there?
Well, I think we are making good progress. And I think Angela's examples are absolutely fantastic, because one of the things I like about what Angela does, it's in real time. It's not, let's wait till the staff meeting. You know, she's talking to her colleagues and they're all talking to each other as well as the day goes on. I think also one of the things that comes across, and certainly comes across in your services, Angela, is that opportunity for people to talk to their colleagues as well as to talk to people in the organization at various levels. And I think we underestimate the power of mutual support across teams. And I think that's started to be better understood. We've seen some great examples, really positive shifts that have happened. And I think also that COVID really shone a light on how important our colleagues were, and also what enormous pressures they were under. And because of COVID, people have tried to do a bit of a reset around how they support their colleagues to make sure that their well-being is being attended to, and also that they feel listened to. And one of the things that comes across in examples where you see really good cultures, people feel listened to. And Angela's point about hearing but then responding and saying, you know, you said, we did, really focuses everybody's mind into the fact that if you raise something and it's legitimate, you know, people, or if it's something that other colleagues are raising, then the organization does respond and does something about it. So I think there are lots of things that are happening. I won't pretend that it's happening everywhere, and I think this is part of the challenge. We are a very diverse sector, but I think as we see more examples of the benefits of this approach, and we're really seeing how retention and how people's satisfaction is really driving the quality and outcomes of the service, I think we'll see more people understanding this is not a nice to do. This has to be riven through every single approach you have to how you support your colleagues, because it's only by having well supported good well-being for colleagues that you will ever have good quality care and good quality outcomes for the people you support.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point here. And I think with with the report, Angela, that was sort of broken down into physical, emotional, and practical support, so the kind of all-encompassing. Kind of how has Majesticare approached that? Are there any initiatives that have been brought in that kind of hit across those three areas specifically?
Yes, and because they're also equally important. Some, you know, I think the peer conversation is a really important one. And one of the things that actually we found is we used to have managers as mental health first aiders. And we used to wonder why mental health first aiders were like completely redundant.
Yeah.
And it's because actually people don't want to show their vulnerability to their manager, because actually maybe they're scared that that might change the way that their manager looks at them. So actually, when we introduced peer mental health first aiders, we were like, of course, never really thought of it before. But it's one of those things. So definitely peer mental health first aid for that sort of, you know, emotional support, and also practical support, because very often peers, they've been through that situation themselves. We do coaching now, so our managers do coaching training, which I think is really important, because let's face it, not everybody knows how to deal with everybody else's problems all the time. You know, we're carers at the end of the day. Many of us are, you know, have gone on to become managers and leaders, but it doesn't make us experts in people's well-being. And I think there's nothing wrong with saying, actually, I need more support to understand what I can do to help other people. You know, I'd rather somebody, you know, if it was me, I'd rather somebody put their hand up and say, actually, I'm going to see if there's somebody else can support you with this. I don't think I'm the right person. Than somebody stumbling along trying to help me with no clue or empathy around what I'm sort of going through. So I think that manager training on coaching and just awareness is really important. Those wellbeing conversations right across the board are something that actually physically, practically, and emotionally makes such a difference. And you know, a key one for us as an organisation this last 12 months is we've really highlighted that menopause agenda. You know, for us, we have, you know, our average age was sort of 47, predominantly a female-led team, and we were probably ignoring what all of the signs were, that actually there were a number of people that needed that additional support. And it wasn't until that actually we had that training and education ourselves, and as a woman of a certain age as well, you know, having been able to sort of openly have conversations with people in the team. So it's not a taboo subject. It is something that is part of, you know, everyday life, that actually, you know, we have a responsibility to make sure that if people want that support, that it's there. And you know what, uniforms in that hot weather last week is you know, there's so many, you know, can I wear a t-shirt to work? Just wear what you want to work. That and that is sort of, you know, as long as it's within certain guidelines, of course, but people need to be comfortable. People can't, you know, if people are uncomfortable, they're not going to perform to the best of their abilities, and we shouldn't expect them to. So those tweaks around what we can do to support people with menopause, and the uniform and break times and start times and night shifts, all of those things that actually I never really thought about. And I'm quite embarrassed to say this, really, you know, until it was sort of, it was in the mirror. And I think we have such a responsibility to make sure that, you know, as providers, as representatives of the sector, to make sure that, you know, people are aware of what education and support is out there, to make sure that our workforce is able to perform to the best of their ability, because they want to. And it's not like they don't want to be brilliant today. It's just how they feel that's stopping them from being brilliant today. Do you know what I mean? And it's what, you know, how are we there to make sure that, like Martin said, it's not just our the people that we support that we make sure have a great day. It's also those people we work with. So those wellbeing conversations right across the board, no matter what age, no matter, you know, what it is that you need, is really, really important. And I know somebody's just chucked in the chat, we provide bottles of water. This is simple, it's simple stuff that makes such a difference to people. We bought everybody an ice lolly. We've got some of those lovely fans that they can wear around their neck and stuff in hot weather. All of that makes a difference. And
it's being human.
We are all human. And it's just about, making sure that we're all there to sort of support each other and do the right thing.
Yeah, and I think, menopause is going to remain such an important topic in this industry. You and I were in a room together a couple of years ago with a group of carers where we did our menopause event. And, I think it's fair to say that the women that very kindly come and spent the day with us were a little bit apprehensive at first and weren't exactly sure what the conversations were going to look at. And about, an hour and a half in, we could barely get round everybody quick enough because everybody has their own examples and experiences, and in some cases, frustrations around it, but ultimately it's opening up that resource and information that's available, and that can't come without openness and collaborative natures.
And to know that other people feel the same as you often is all it takes to make somebody feel a bit better. You're not on your own, are the famous last words, but it is so important. It really is.
Fab. And I guess on that section, Sarah, where the research really showed that it is those physical, emotional and practical together, that it really can't be dealt with in isolation. I know you said at the beginning it's rarely one small aspect, it's a cumulative thing over time that really changes people's experience of their job. Why is it important from your point of view to view these things together?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit menopause is probably the best example of that, where you've got emotional understanding. And I think it's important to say with the menopause as well, it's not about just listening to the women, it's about listening to the men and how they're interacting with the women within the staff, but also that training point for the men to understand how they can then support their colleagues, their relatives, and understand what they're really going through from an emotional side of it. Then obviously from the practical side of it, it is about that workplace, it's about uniforms, that physical comfort side of it. But I think not everyone goes through menopause with the same symptoms. And perimenopause, I must say, perimenopause as well, is something that is, again, becoming more prevalent topic and understanding, even from like early 30s now, of how people's mentality is changing and physicality is changing, and sensitivity to things like fabrics and wash conditioners and all these things to think about. And I think if you just looked at it in isolation of, okay, let's just talk about it from an emotional point of view, you're actually not going to solve the issue. You need to be able to have a conversation where you're looking at the emotional challenges, the practical challenges and the physical challenges together. Now, I'm not going to say you're going to be able to fix everything overnight, but I think it's important to start those conversations. And like I said at the beginning, just kind of expanding those conversations out to the entire workforce, not just the small area that might have brought that challenge to the forefront.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think to move us through, because we've got a very engaged chat, which is fantastic to see, I think we're definitely going to have some questions for the end here. So looking at what organisations can do now, Angela, for our lovely audience watching today, if they only had a limited budget and limited time, what are the first 3 things that you think they should review?
Wellbeing plans, definitely, and the mental health first aider support to back up that. I think the way that they get feedback from teams would be the first thing I'd probably look at, to be honest, because without that feedback, we don't know what people want. And actually, like Martin said, it all comes down to leadership. So looking at your leadership style, are you making yourself accessible? Are you open? Do people find you approachable? None of those things cost a penny, and actually are quite easy to achieve. So they would be the 3 things that I would definitely highlight, because just those 3 things, I think, will give organisations more information, more data and more insight into what people want on a day-to-day basis.
Fantastic. And Martin, we're not asking people to do everything their own here. If we would be very unrealistic to say that people have unlimited time and resource to be looking at these areas. But do you think there are opportunities that the current providers are most commonly overlooking, that they might be able to access support a bit more readily, or not taking advantage of initiatives that have already been put in place?
Yeah, I think really there is a lot out there. And as Angela said, it doesn't have to cost a fortune. So, for example, on the Care England website, there are loads of resources that people can download that will be really helpful to them. We've got loads of white papers. We've done work on menopause, as we said earlier. There are also amazing resources from places like Skills for Care, which people can access. I think it's also really important to have the opportunity to talk to other people in the sector, to see what they did and what their experience was, to really help people think, oh, this isn't too difficult. I can actually start. And Angela's point about let's start with a conversation of the people who we are working together with. That's a really good place to start. And the other thing that came across from this discussion, and certainly came across from the research, was it doesn't have to be the big expensive initiative. It's not only about, oh, I want to see X more in my pay packet. It's about that issue of recognition. It's that issue of being listened to. It's that issue of feeling that you are valued by the organization. Leaders who understand people need to look at the quality of the work. And Angela, I want to use you as a good example of this. Angela has developed a lot of technology in her services, but she always does that by saying, well, how does it improve the outcomes and the experience for the person who uses services? How does it improve the quality of work for colleagues? And then how does it make efficiencies? And those efficiencies then get reinvested in the organization. So I think having some clarity about what the benefits of this are and a framework on which you will work to improve the way in which you connect with colleagues is a really great starting point. And those things do not cost money. They are about changes in culture, mindset, and approach. They're not about endlessly having to put money in at the top in order to get an outcome. And I think the research really showed that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things of, we know, and obviously from being involved in some of these conversations in the past, a lot of people haven't known exactly where to start, and it's almost felt quite overwhelming of, do we start from a policy point of view, and that's quite a big overhaul of the processes, or do we start with this, but how do we communicate that and disseminate the instructions and make sure it's working? But most people, it sounds like, just honestly gave it a go, tried to implement something, took honest feedback, trial and improvement, and then they've reached something that's really changed, satisfaction levels. And Angela, similar to your stories, they're just hearing things that they weren't hearing previously because they gave it a go, and their teams could see that they were trying and that they were open to these things.
I think if I could just come in there just to sort of say something that I probably should have said, is that language is really important too. The language that we use, and getting somebody to trust you, getting somebody to open up to you about whether it's their emotional, their physical well-being is really important. And when I was talking about sort of just for me moments and things like that, it's so much softer than I'm taking you into, we're going to have a supervision tomorrow. People think supervision is something to tell them they're doing something wrong. And that's just because of the word, we're supervising you. Whereas actually just changing that language slightly into, this conversation is just about you. People will come in with a different attitude and be open to telling you more stuff about them, rather than being fearful about what you're going to say about their work. So I think language, the team word rather than staff, all of those things I think really do make a difference.
Yeah, I think my recommendation for today would definitely be, don't approach it as, oh, could I just have 5 minutes with you this afternoon, and then no further context. Sarah, I want to come to you on kind of what practical improvements can organisations make that have the greatest impact on day-to-day staff experience, from your experience and from what you've sort of seen in the report that you've been developing?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, you've just hit the nail on the head. Is this has to be something that's consistent. It can't be something that you think, okay, this sounds like a great idea, let's implement those opportunities for our employees to have conversations, to discuss their feelings and their challenges, and then stop it after a couple of
Yeah.
months because you feel like you've solved the issue. It's got to be an ongoing, permanent change within your corporation. I think if that happens, you're going to get more and more people opening up. People are going to be more comfortable. You're going to get more feedback. And sometimes I think it's about approaching it in small steps. I think sometimes some of the small changes can make such a meaningful difference. So I think it's about not being fearful that you're going to open massive can of worms and not know how to kind of put solutions in place. Is pick I think the term is the low hanging fruit to start with, where you can fix some little things that will make that meaningful difference to the staff, and then just kind of scale it up over a period of time. I think if you try and do too much too quickly, I think that's when you'll lose the engagement with the staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the reasons for this conversation today is genuinely to offer this practical advice that people can go and start using. So I'm very keen to kind of finish off on a question about the future here. So I'm going to be asking, if we were having this conversation again in 3 years' time, which I'd love to, because you're all fantastic and have lots of interesting things to say, what would you most like to see changed about the experience of working in care? Sarah, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I think that greater recognition that the workforce well-being and the quality of care are intrinsically linked.
Yes.
I think that it's that understanding of getting people together, acting on that employee feedback, and it will help improve the healthcare that is given to patients, because if you've got a happy workforce, it will pass down, that positivity will naturally radiate from the staff. And then, like I said, just that better integration of understanding of physical, emotional, practical support for care workers, and just tackling it in small bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, fantastic. Angela, may I come to you?
I'd like to think we weren't having to have these conversations in 3 years, because it was, that actually it had become just part of who we are and what we do every day. I'd love it to be second nature. I think as two bits. So as a sector, we care. And I'd like that to be care for our people, and the focus to be the same, whether it's somebody that works, requires, or lives in care. I think care is care, and I'd like to see that joined up and the recognition being given to everybody, every person within that. But also, I'd like everybody to understand care, and that that it's not an easy option, that it actually is hard work, it is a profession, it is a skilled job, and that not only do we as peers and employees and as people that work in the system and in the sector listen to people, but actually outside agencies do as well, and people get the recognition they deserve from everywhere, not just from people that understand and empathise and work within the sector.
Totally agree. And Martin?
Well, Angela and Sarah put it better than I can, and I ditto all those points. But I guess I would like to see in 3 years the impact of this, meaning that people understand care and it is a profession of choice. And I want to see loads of young people thinking this is my destination of choice because it's a great place to work and I'm respected and the people I support are respected. I think that's where I'd like us to be in 3 years.
Fantastic. Very concise. Great. So we have had a couple of interactions through the chat throughout. So I'm just going to have a quick look at questions here. So we have a question from Jake Blunt, which is, do you find working with organisations like ourselves, the King's Trust, introducing new young people who are passionate and enthusiastic about the workforce enables more experienced staff members to develop and grow?
Well, shall I jump in there? Definitely. I really think that one of the things that's great is that as we get new colleagues coming into the sector, also the people who are experienced really understand that they have an important role in nurturing and supporting and developing the next, generation of the workforce. So I think it's really great to be working with organisations like the King's Trust, not least because you come at it from a very broad spectrum of different people who are engaged in the King's Trust. So it's not only about the usual suspects, and you have lots that you can advise and support the care sector with. And I hope that we will provide really great opportunities for people to develop careers in care that have come through that link that we have with your organisation.
Fantastic. I guess another one, so based on what we've been seeing today being said in the chat, one of the key areas that's come up is how can care providers gather meaningful feedback from staff without creating another survey that doesn't necessarily get the strongest engagement? And I know, Angela, you talked about, when you're wanting to get this on the spot feedback, introducing it to clock in, clock out is definitely one of these methods. I guess if you could either speak to a little bit more about that or any other approaches that you've tried or are considering.
Yeah, I mean, we do lots of what we call them opportunities to chat. So I think it's whatever those opportunities are, however they manifest themselves, they don't have to be organised. They could just be, do you want to do, okay, come on with me, let's just have a chat. And just making sure that, you say to people, are you okay if I take a couple of notes? Or, if they don't want notes, then, just make sure that you're taking that feedback and using it in a positive way. But also, don't dismiss peer conversations, don't dismiss group conversations. Because actually people sometimes are nervous to talk on a one-to-one, but put them as a group. They feel stronger, they feel they feel more confident to put their points of view across, and I would encourage that if people are happy in those forums. But the key thing is, don't listen to somebody and do nothing with it, because they'll never talk to you again. And so for me, it's all about but you know what? I've just seen somebody put, I learn everything from the smoker's corner. It's so true. I take my team out for a pint, like once a month. I sit around a table, we have a pint, and I'll go on a chip cob and we have a conversation and I learn loads. I'll go into the homes and join in an activity. That's where I hear my best information. So as long as whatever you're hearing, you still do something about, then those more informal conversations can sometimes just have such an impact on the business, because people are looking at you and approaching you and talking to you in a completely different way.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think something that you've said there about these group conversations, I think it really, really speaks to what we've been discussing today as well, in terms of facilitating peer-to-peer. And I guess if a group of people come and speak to you about a particular area and then know that they've got this shared experience, or if it's something that they would find a little bit more private, that they've got a group of peers that they can speak to as well day to day. It's just kind of finding different ways as an organisation to ease and facilitate these conversations and just make that more embedded in the culture. Yeah, fantastic. And then another one here. So one of our wonderful contributors has highlighted the importance of broadening the conversation around reasonable adjustments so they aren't limited to issues that directly affect job performance. So they're asking, what do you think is the most overlooked area of workforce wellbeing in care today? Perhaps an element that we haven't touched on, but that just, contributes to job performance in a slightly one step removed sense. I'm not sure if anybody has a contribution on that one.
Well, I think it's really important for us to recognise that as a 24/7, 365-day-a-week organisation and profession, there are lots of ways in which we can offer very flexible working, and we can also offer that at different times for different people. And I think often we forget that people's needs change throughout their journey as in a career, and so enabling people, perhaps even for short times, to have more flexibility, or then go back to established patterns or whatever. I think those sorts of things could be really helpful to enable us to recognize the importance of what people do, but also that might be the opportunity for them to focus on something that's going on in their life and still maintain their work life as well, though in a different and more flexible way.
Fantastic. And sorry, I'm rattling through the questions because we've had, fantastic engagement on this one. But with training, one of our contributors has asked, training is so important, and it came up as a big indicator of retention satisfaction in the report, but that it's very difficult to find time for team members to complete their training, because naturally it's a very full-on and demanding job. So kind of any practical solutions or recommendations around how to make it possible for team members to complete the training that you make available for them?
I can take some of that if you like. So having those trainers in the team have really made a difference to us. So obviously we still have our external training and everything else, but we have something now which is called a buddy system. So especially when people first start, they're given a buddy and they work with them through their induction and their training, but actually they train the trainers themselves. So, if there's somebody needs, we all know that things go wrong on a shift. If we think, oh gosh, actually we need to give that person some training, it just makes it so much easier to do that on the spot training. But that it doesn't replace the external stuff. What it does is it underpins the day-to-day practice of the training that people are receiving, and basically helps to maintain competency levels, but also support. Some people take a little bit longer to learn something than other people, and that's absolutely fine. But very often training is just one day. So having those people that are in those communities, whether in domiciliary care, in home care, or in the care homes, really does make a difference that they've got that person behind them that they can lean on for that support.
Fantastic. And just in the nick of time, that wraps us up. I just want to take the opportunity to thank all three of you for such an interesting discussion. It's really great to give your time up for something like this. And I think we can all very much agree that the future of care really depends on supporting the people who deliver it. A couple of points just for the audience joining us today. Richard has very kindly shared a couple of links to the overall care report and the menopause mini reports in the chat. They are also available on the QR code that should come up on the closing screen. But we just really encourage you to listen to what you've heard today and just review your current approach and just see what those first small practical improvements could look like. And just keep on sharing examples of what best practice looks like. We will be sending the reports and the recording via email too, and everything is also available on the Care England website. Thank you so much for joining us today, and stay tuned for future developments. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.